If you listened to the last episode of the show, you know it was all about the Atlanta Track Club and the Peachtree Road Race. Well, on this episode, I have the executive director of ATC and also their director of marketing coming up now. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Runway Podcast. Today I have Rich of Atlanta Track Club and also Jay of Atlanta Track Club. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, Kim.
Of course. If you can just reintroduce yourselves and just tell us what your positions are within the organization.
Sure, Jay, why don't you go first? All right, I'll go first. My name is Jay Holder. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for Atlanta Track Club.
Okay.
And my name is Rich Kenah, and I am the executive director here at Atlanta Track Club, and also with that title comes the title of race director of the AJC Peachtree Road Race.
Okay, and I want to thank Jay for reaching out to me. I did tag you guys on my post because I wanted you to see the episode and, you know, just get an idea of the perspective of a runner, how a runner would feel about, you know, what went on with the Peachtree Road Race. So I know you listened to the episode and you had some responses to some of what I said. So I'll let Jay, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I mean, I'll toss it to Rich here in a second, but I think that one of the things for us, it's important to take any opportunity to respond to feedback, whether positive or negative, to the things that we do here at Atlanta Track Club, whether that be from a member, a participant, or someone with a platform like yourself. Like, it's really important for us to have those conversations and to one, share our perspective with people, but then also learn is devoid of a learning experience. So we appreciate that the opportunity to come on.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could add to that, Kim, I believe it or not, I have not actually listened to your last podcast.
Well, you should have.
Yeah, I know I should have, and Jay gave me a summary.
Mm-hmm.
And my time sort of this last week has been spent trying to have one-on-one conversations like this to give some insight into how we got to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, one of the things that I'm proud of about this organization is that we take feedback from the community very seriously. And when we made this announcement last week, we had, call it just over 10 of our 20 some odd staffers dedicated, focused to responding, communicating with those that we heard from who had questions, comments, concerns about how our decision impacted them. Mm-hmm. So appreciate the fact that you are now giving us the opportunity to talk directly to you.
Mm-hmm. Now, what I have a couple questions from myself and also from members of Atlanta Track Club, because some of your members have reached out to me. They heard the show and, they just wanted to know what is going on, what went into your decision-making process and what's going on with your memberships going forward. So first, what was the process like for you all deciding to move ahead with the lottery for 2020?
I'll jump in there if you're okay with that, Jay. So we came out of what was a big weekend for us here in Atlanta. We called it America's Marathon Weekend. It was Atlanta Marathon. It was the Olympic trials. And we were approaching our normal registration period, call it March 15th to March 31st. And that was right sort of as the pandemic was taking hold in the US. And there were sort of lots of predictions, but no one knew much beyond that there was going to be some sort of temporary pause in large numbers of people gathering. So we had the first decision we had to make: do we continue with our registration period? And obviously we made the decision. We don't know enough at this point to be able to say that this race isn't happening on July 4th. So we are absolutely full throttle planning for our Peachtree on July 4th. So we invested ourselves in that process then. And then once we got through registration period and we looked at what the models were showing, for the first few weeks, the models were showing, actually up until when we made the announcement, the models were showing that there would be an ebb point in the summer, specifically in that early July period, when it got hot and people were outside, that you could potentially have an event like the Peachtree. So we waited as long as we could to see whether that was going to be a reality. We announced on May 1st that there was too much unknown, that our medical community, when you do a race with 60,000 people, you are hyper reliant on the medical community. We realized that we were not going to be able to have it on July 4th. So at that point, right as we were heading into that announcement, we consulted with infectious disease doctors, our normal medical branch, the city of Atlanta, and we collectively decided that we need to postpone. And we had a bunch of dates that we looked at. And Thanksgiving Day was almost this perfect storm for us. It was far enough beyond the peaks of what the virus looked when the virus was going to peak, one. Two, it was far enough into the year that we got beyond all of the other events that had already been rescheduled in Atlanta. For example, you couldn't do something on Labor Day. You couldn't do something on Columbus Day. So we leaned into the fact that Thanksgiving is the most popular day in the United States to run a race. And so we made that decision for Thanksgiving.
But don't you already have a race on Thanksgiving?
Yes, it's a good point. In fact, we made the difficult decision to cancel that race and put the Peachtree on Thanksgiving.
Now, is that because the Peachtree is such a large race that you made that decision? Because I know that your Thanksgiving race is a part of a series.
Correct. So Thanksgiving is part of the Triple Peach Series, one. Two, it is another event that is laden with tradition here at the track club. But if you're to handicap the two of them together, the Peachtree has been around for almost twice as long. The Peachtree is probably 4 times as large. And this organization, at least a good portion of this organization's DNA, its reputation, is built around the Peachtree. So we wanted to do all that we could to bring the Peachtree to life.
Is it really the Peachtree Road Race if it's not on July 4th?
It's a great question. It's not the Peachtree that everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
But when we made the decision on May 1st to go in that direction, we, in a short period of time, we changed the color scheme, we changed the theme, we changed everything so that it could potentially be a Thanksgiving Day celebration in sort of around a very difficult year that everybody got through as best they could. And then mid-July, after hours and hours and hours of what I would call a task force made up of our own internal staff, where we looked at the mitigation efforts that we looked to roll out so that we could have the event on Thanksgiving. We saw a spike that just continued with no sign that we would get to Thanksgiving in a way that could be safe. More about it. And knowing that we were heading towards September 1, August 31st, when we were relaunching registration, we wanted to make sure we got ahead of it as much as we could and made that announcement. Purchase. So it's a really long explanation. I'm sorry, but those are the steps that we took.
Now, can I add 2 things to that real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
The first, I would say, you brought up the Thanksgiving date and how we have another race. That actually played, I think, in our favor, because one of the things that we were really conscious of when we were deciding the new date was this virus is going to disrupt Atlanta, the way of life in Atlanta, once at a time. We wanted to pick a weekend that already had something happening on it, because road races disrupt traffic, they disrupt businesses. And so to say, okay, we're going to move the Peachtree to another weekend and then we're going to do Thanksgiving on this weekend, is just another weekend where businesses would be impacted, traffic would be impacted. So we thought, okay, this will minimize the impact on the city if we move it to a different weekend. So I think that was part of the reason that we were but made the decision to cancel the Thanksgiving Day half, because we wanted to just not bulk up the number of weekends in the fall that we were disrupting traffic.
Mm-hmm. Did you get any input from any of your members on what they would think of the Peachtree being held on Thanksgiving instead of July 4th?
We did. We did not do a mass survey, but we have ambassadors, we have run leads, we have a lot of different constituent groups that we interact with on a daily basis. What we have found through surveying, if you just send out a large survey, you're going to get sort of this huge, wide variation, and it's going to look sort of like a bell curve in sort of anything that you do. And we decided that we were more informed, if you will, on the elements that we were facing in terms of the health and safety, in terms of what the infectious disease doctors were telling us, in terms of what the city was telling us, to be able to make the decision with a smaller focus group rather than surveying the 45,000 people who had registered at that point.
Mm-hmm. So I want to loop back around to the lottery, because I've run the Peachtree Road Race for 4 years. I'm a New Yorker, as most of my listeners know, but I visit Atlanta frequently. So I'm on your email list. I was getting the emails, and I saw that a refund was an option if something was to occur. So if you thought that the race would happen on Thanksgiving, why was there a refund option if you enter the lottery or register for the race?
So it's a good question. So when we came out of that initial registration period and we were moving towards May 1st, and we were and continue to operate in an industry where standard fare is to have people register under the understanding that this is a non-refundable entry fee. We wanted to stay above sort of that floor. We wanted to over-deliver on what that minimum standard was. So we thought it was really important in that period to give people an option. So we gave them the option for a refund, the option for deferment, the option for virtual, the option to donate their dollars to Atlanta Track Club as a nonprofit. So yes, in that first go around, we did offer refunds in an environment that was uncertain and in a way that we didn't necessarily have to. And I know that sort of sounds sort of raw coming from me at that point, but I was proud of the fact that we tried to go above and beyond in that May 1st period.
Now, was there a clause in your fine print saying that if you didn't take the refund now, you were not getting that refund later if we flip this over to a virtual? Because that was a lot of the complaints in your comments, was that we weren't told that if this race doesn't happen, it's going virtual and we're not being offered a refund at the later date.
Yeah, and I think that is a fair and legitimate complaint and concern and feedback that we did not say to the community at large on May 1st that if you don't take this now, you've lost any other option. Because at that point, to be honest with you, we thought we had two options, an in-person and a virtual. So I think that is an absolutely fair criticism for the second time around, that we did not give people the option like we did the first time.
So is that fair to your, because I don't know, but I would assume a good bulk of the people that register for the race are Atlanta Track Club members. So is that fair to the members that they weren't told up front that they would not receive a refund if this race went virtual?
Is it fair to our members?
Because this is what I'm reading. This is what a lot of people are saying, that they weren't told. If they were told, maybe they would have taken that refund up front.
Yeah, and I as the executive director and as the race director, I'll own that and say, we're feeling our way through this pandemic like everyone else. And hindsight is what people say it is. If I had the opportunity to go back and to lay out more clearly, knowing where we are with coronavirus now, yeah, I would absolutely take that option. I would add that if you are a member of the track club, and you get all of our correspondence.
Well, I had to unsubscribe actually, because yeah, when this was going on in like the March, I think you guys were sending out a very excessive amount of emails, and it seemed quite insensitive to me you know, since I'm from New York and we were in the midst of the pandemic. So yeah, I had to fall back from Atlanta Track Club, unfortunately.
I mean, that's actually a good point. And if I could talk about that for a second, and Jamie, I toss it to you just in terms of how in those first few days, that first week of registration, what we were doing and what we learned.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I kind of addressed it in my email to you. So there's two things there. The first, admittedly, our marketing efforts are targeted to Atlanta because 90% of our field at the Peachtree are in Atlanta. And Atlanta was not New York in mid-March. And I will say I was not looking through the lens of a person who lives in New York City when sending out those first communications. And I think if I had been, it would have been a much different cadence. But about, I'd say 4 to 5 days into our typical registration blitz, which is a playbook we follow every year. You know, we've got 15 days to register people. We're going to remind them as often as possible because when that deadline hits, there's no other option. So every year we do I would say a fairly aggressive email and digital campaign to get people to register. 4 to 5 days into this year, as we kept reading the headlines and seeing what was happening, Rich, myself, and one of our event marketing managers got on a call and just said, we need to retool this whole thing. And we pulled back drastically. Now, I imagine that was probably after you unsubscribed, but we really did. We limited the frequency of our emails. I think we sent 2 more after those initial 4 to 5 days, understanding that the tone seemed fairly tone deaf to what was happening in the Atlanta community by that point in the rest of the country. So we did retool, but as Rich said earlier, this has been a learning process for us the entire time. So, you know, I think we came out of the gate strong, realized that it was probably not the right approach and pulled back.
So for your members that, you know, I spoke with one of my friends who is a member and she said that she has called your offices and voiced her concerns. Are you offering like any deferrals instead of a refund to 2021 possibly?
No, so what we announced last week and what we are saying to our members and non-members alike, those who had already registered, who were still in the in-person, we automatically moved you over to the virtual race. So we said, hey, listen, all of these mitigation ideas that we came up with, recognize and we realized that maybe we could have put on a race, it wouldn't have been the Peachtree. So we're going to invest all of our time and effort and our focus into delivering the virtual Peachtree. So to your point, first time around, we offered refunds and deferrals. This time, we said, hey, we're going to go all in with a best-in-class virtual experience.
Now, being based in New York, I'm used to New York Road Runners. Those are kind of your competitors. So how do you feel that your policies kind of match up against theirs? Because they have offered refunds for all of their races or deferrals or credit for every single race that they offer. And I know it's a different, you know, they're a huge organization, it's different, but how do you feel that you guys are matching up against your competitors in that aspect?
So I'll answer real briefly and then toss it over to Jay. There's a few thoughts. Number one, I think we see New York Road Runners as friends, colleagues, collaborators, not necessarily competitors because we're in different markets. Very much the same in terms of mission focus type organization. I am proud of the fact that we provide refunds for everyone. In the beginning of our call here, we talked about our Thanksgiving Day race, and that referring to our Triple Peach, our series. So we were able to provide a full refund for the people who had already registered for the 10-miler and for Thanksgiving Day. And we have provided a refund for virtually every other event that we do on the calendar, which is roughly 30 a year. And the last thing that I would add, and this is not an attempt to distract from the concerns that you and others have, is the price point of the track club's events are sufficiently and significantly lower than what the market rate is. Like New York City, it's expensive to be in New York City. It's expensive.
Not really. Our member races are $18. The larger races cost a little bit more, but the smaller.
And our member races are free.
So
the ones for the track club.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And again, we're not competitors. We're New York Roadrunners. Very different in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I may have stepped on some of your thoughts on this.
No, I don't know the internal dealings of the New York Roadrunners. I know, just like they've been in situations before where they're approaching something for the first time. That's really what we're in here. And I think the proximity of when our next race was coming up, and how big of a revenue driver and a piece of what we do, Peachtree is, played a big part in it. So. Yeah, I can't really speak to what the Roadrunners are doing and what they've done. And I know they provide fantastic customer service and have really managed their way.
I have problems with them sometimes too.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They're not perfect,
Yeah.
but they've handled this situation quite well, I must say.
I agree. I mean, from what all I've seen, I'm really impressed with what they've done and how they pivoted the marathon. I was there the year that I was there working with my former job the year that the marathon was canceled, and I know that was a huge learning experience from them. And I know that 7 years later has provided a lot of guidance in how they steer through crises in the future. So really impressed with what they've done.
Now, Jay, I want to know what was up with you and those responses on social media, because some of them were like very snippy, and I mean, I don't know. I read a couple of them on the show, and to me, they read a little off-putting. So I don't know how the members felt with you responding to them in that way. So
I'll point out the one you read on the show, and I don't know of any others because that's the only one I heard. Well, first, we worked really hard, as I said at the beginning, to respond to every comment that we got, whether it be just responding to the thread on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, sending them a personal email, or I sent a lot of people my phone number and talked to a lot of people on the phone. And many of those conversations did not end with us agreeing or did not end with the person getting the answer they wanted. And I knew that going into it, but I felt like it was important to have a conversation. Social media, as I'm sure you know as well as I do, is not the best place to actually talk to a person. Mm-hmm. The one that you pointed out in particular, I think that there's some context that was missing there. So that person had talked to someone on our team, or her husband had rather, and was not satisfied with how that conversation went. I didn't hear that conversation, but she indicated earlier on in the comments that she was not satisfied with how that conversation went. And so when I responded, because I didn't want to leave her comment hanging there, one of the things I said was, I would offer to call you, but it's, that has already happened and it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. And when I said I did not talk to her husband, I meant I personally did not talk to her husband, because she had indicated earlier that she spoke with a woman. And I'm not a woman. I think you bring up a good point. Tone does not come across well on social media and in emails. And for me, I don't read them as snippy, but what I read as snippy, you might, and vice versa. So that is why I try to have as many opportunities to call people as I could, because I feel like you get to a better understanding of a person, and you see a person as a person. You understand their points, and you might not agree, and you might not be able to give them that answer they want, but you can at least have a conversation with a person and understand where they're coming from a lot better. So that was really the direction I tried to steer everything in. I spent most of that day, Wednesday, on the phone with people, and I would say 90% of the conversations I had on the phone ended with a mutual understanding. I didn't end up best friends with a whole lot of people. There's one woman who I've promised a beer to when she runs by my house on Thanksgiving Day, doing her virtual race. But that's why I tried to steer as many conversations to the phone or to offline email as possible, because I think that it's really easy to misread or to misunderstand or to take out of context things that happen in a social media forum.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, because tone definitely comes across different ways to different people online. So I'm glad that you cleared that up. So I have a couple questions from one of your members. They wanted me to ask you these questions. Are you refunding any membership fees or giving a reduction in fees for 2020?
Short answer for right now is no. We are looking for at 2021 and saying, how can we make your member experience that much better in 2021? Mm-hmm. We have tried. So 2020 is sort of this lost year for so many people for so many different reasons. We've tried to deliver those same member benefits as best we can. So, this weekend we have another virtual race that's free for our members. We have a Grand Prix series that we tried to keep intact. We try to deliver the member gift. But the reality is there's a big hole on July 4th that we just have not found a way to fill back in yet. And we've chosen to try to make something special out of Thanksgiving and build back toward next year. So short answer is no, but trying to figure out how we make that up to our members in a way that is meaningful for the most number of them.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I would say that one of our biggest tasks that we recognize is that we have to trust and loyalty and affinity is earned, and this decision is going to erode some of that trust and affinity and loyalty from people. So we have a big task ahead of us. It's reminding people why they're members, why they want to be members, and what we can offer them. And so that's a conversation that I'd say is happening daily as we understand that's kind of the task at hand for us right now.
Mm-hmm. Also, one of your members, they mentioned that most people get the ATC membership to get guaranteed entry into Peachtree. And something about this, you get 6 free races and discounts from other races, and they're not getting that this year. So how are you compensating for that?
Jay, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so we have not been able to put on the free events that we put on. So our membership comes with, so it's $35 for an individual. It does get you the guaranteed entry into Peachtree, which, as you point out now, is not so much of a benefit this year in this 2020 craziness. Our free events have not been able to be held because we can't get the permits or can't gather safely in the areas that we generally hold them. We have transitioned them all to virtual, which I know for a lot of people it's not the same. I've never been a fan of virtual running myself, but in a year where there are no road races, I'll take it. So we've transitioned them all to virtual. Tried to really add some new challenges into it. Again, it's kind of making do with what we have. So we're doing a virtual cross country race next month rather. We're doing a prepping for Peachtree 10K in October, and again, all free. We track your results online. We're doing some cool social media interactions, so we're doing that. We'll continue the discounts all continue to remain. So we have discounts with a number of our partners and sponsors, Waffle House being a big one, Mizuno is our footwear and apparel partner, and then discounts at all the running stores. So all those benefits remain intact. There's also discounts with the Georgia Aquarium, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is the title partner of the Peachtree. All of those remain intact. The big one, as you point out, that's not there is the guaranteed entry for Peachtree. So as Rich pointed out, we are looking for ways to deliver on that in 2021.
Okay.
And Kim, if you're okay, if I'd like to add to that is
sure.
That for your listeners and our members who are listeners to hear, our membership has grown significantly over the last 10 years. We have more than 33,000 paying members, but in any given year, only about half of those people participate in the Peachtree. So yes, a large number of people register for that guaranteed entry to Peachtree. But one of the things that the club is proud of is that over these last 7-8 years, we started to build out our other programming so that it is standalone, so that there is value add to your membership beyond that Peachtree. We've made some big progress. But in a year when there is coronavirus, then we feel that ever more because we're not able to deliver those like we
I'll add one more thing to that, and I'm sorry this answer is longer than you wanted it to be. But when this happened and we realized that we're not going to be able to hold the in-person races that are the bread and butter of our organization, we got together and said, what can we do to remind people that we provide value and we're still here for them as a running community? So we launched a free content platform called The Distance back in April. And every week we have 3 to 5 live exercise classes that everybody can take part in. We put a number of free training articles on there, nutrition advice, things that just keep people active and moving and sane, quite frankly, during a time when we're all quarantined. So we've tried to find things that add value to people's membership, add value to their daily running routine. You know, for some people without the races, it's just not the same, but we're doing the best we can in times that we haven't operated in before.
So how has the pandemic affected Atlanta Track Club? Because you listened to the show, Jay. I read off your salaries on the show because you mentioned you were a nonprofit. So I wanted to know where the money was going. So have you cut staff? What's changed at Atlanta Track Club?
Sure. So I'll answer that. That falls under my role here as the race director and the executive director. So in the spring, we reduced, so we started out the year with roughly 30 staff, full-time staff, and we unfortunately had to, as a result of the pandemic, we laid off 3 staff. And as the coronavirus, the pandemic has continued, and we've had to continue to postpone or cancel or reduce offerings, paid offerings. I have tried to manage our reserves as best we can. So we have depleted a significant amount of our reserves to get us through this year. But when we reduced our workforce back in the spring, I made the commitment to our remaining staff we would make it through this year without having to lay anyone else off. So we are going to see that through, but we are going to experience furloughs. So, and my approach as a leader of the organization is sort of sounds cliche, but an all for one for all type approach. So everyone in the organization is going to experience at least a 1-month furlough. And as the leader of the organization, I need to take the biggest hit on that in terms of what my salary percentage reduction is compared to everybody else.
So that's good to hear. I think your members would be happy that, you know, they're not losing out on their fees, and, you know, everyone's taking a hit this year. We all know that. And I don't want to make this show to bash you all. I just wanted to give the perspective from a runner, because, you know, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So I'm happy that you guys were able to come on and let us know what's going on and what you all went through in trying to put this race on this year. So before we go, I want to ask you one more question that always grinds my gears. Why do we pick up the medal at the expo for Peachtree Road Race? I never understood that.
I can take that because I heard you talk about it on the show, and I thought, oh, I got to make notes on that one. So I know that you're not a native Atlantan, and neither am I. The thing that I learned, the first thing I learned on day 1 on the job at Atlanta Track Club is don't mess with the shirt. The shirt is the thing. And I know you don't like the shirt.
No, I don't like the shirt.
There's a line of Atlantans that would disagree with you here. Like, I mean, it is a tradition like you've never seen before.
I like the designing and the process. Yeah. I don't like your shirts. I'm sorry. They are terrible. I mean,
and that's always been divisive. Like we've tried, it's been the same material since I've been here, but I know it's been a tech shirt in the past. It's been plain old cotton in the past. And when you've got 60,000 people, I think that being able to find a solution that everybody loves is nearly impossible. But I would say generally the feedback on the material of the shirt is favorable. But of course, there are people like yourself who don't like it, and that's understandable.
No. Jay, can I add an operational element to the shirt and the medal conversation? So this past year was the 50th running of the Peachtree, as I'm sure you well know. And we toyed with the idea, so this was in 2019, of delivering a special 50th commemorative medal to everyone when they came across the finish line. The finish line at the Peachtree is what I would consider sort of one of the wonders of the world, to move 60,000 people through that finish line, through the chute, through the t-shirt area, through the water area in a way that does not create a bottleneck is just this incredible engineering feat. I got enough pushback from our longtime volunteers who have been involved in this organization long before I was, and staff who have been here long before Jay and I were, that if you need to be really careful, because you might think that this medal, handing it out of the finish line either right before or right after the shirts, is a great idea, but we can't try that in real time with 60,000 people because we might back up the race 2 miles up the road. So that's why we chose to stick with that tradition build it around the t-shirt, and continue the focus on that t-shirt design and sort of the feeling of sort of I love the t-shirt or I hate the t-shirt when you put your bag and you come across the finish line. It sounds like more the latter.
I'm on the hate the t-shirt. The t-shirt, not the design. The t-shirt. I think you guys need to get women's fit t-shirts. And I like my medal at the finish line because last year I forgot to bring the medal, so I had to borrow someone else's medal to take a picture with my medal at the fit. And the year before that, I forgot the medal entirely at the expo.
Yeah, and I assume those are your medals proudly displayed over.
Yeah, these are my medals. I had to take a lot of them out because it falls off the wall. It's too heavy. But yeah,
I see the New York City Marathon one back there.
Oh, yeah,
right?
I have all my marathon medals here.
Yeah. If I know you're supposed to be asking us questions, but if you, we'd love to see what the others in the industry are doing. What's your favorite medal?
I really loved last year's New York City medal. It was like an apple.
Wow, yeah, that is nice.
Yeah, and the one before that was really good as well. It was just had the Lady Liberty. So like if you put an Atlanta landmark on it, that would be nice.
Simple and clean. That's your
yeah.
Style. Yeah.
And I have a really ugly one, but it's really creative. From Gasparilla.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, it's ugly, but it's nice.
Every other big race we do give medals, and we have a graphic designer who's brilliant at coming up with medal ideas. For Peachtree, who just texted me actually right when I said his name, the Peachtree, for most people, the medal has always been the shirt, and so we I would say invest more time and effort into making sure that the shirt is what people want, and always open for feedback on the shirt though, because it is such a big part of the tradition.
Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being on the Runway podcast. I appreciate you reaching out to me and, just kind of clearing the air, because I know I went off on a little rant on you all, deservedly, but I'm glad you came on to, just give your side of things of how it went down, and maybe I'll be back for the Peachtree Road Race next year.
I hope so. It was clear that you were passionate about running, and we're passionate about running. So I'm glad we had this conversation. Thanks for giving us the time.
Sure.
Kim, and thanks again for the time. If you decide to take a chance on us next year and so that we can rebuild some confidence, you've got my word that I will be standing at the finish line for a medal with you before you get to your t-shirt.
I appreciate that. Okay, fellas. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks,
Have
Kim.
a good one.
Okay. I would like to thank Jay Holder and Rich Kenah of the Atlanta Track Club for being on the Runway podcast and for clearing the air and answering my questions that I had about this race. I know a lot of you, especially Atlanta Track Club members, had some questions that you wanted them to answer, and I think they did a pretty good job at answering it. You might still not be happy with what they had to say, but it's your decision to either stay and support the Atlanta Track Club or move on and support other road races and race directors in the Atlanta area. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Runway podcast, and I will catch you next time. Later. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Be sure to subscribe to The Runway on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review of the show on Apple Podcasts. It would really help me out. If you are a runner that has a story to tell and you would like to be on the show, you can email hello@therunwave.com or send us a DM on Instagram to The Run Wave. See you next time.